What's up? Greetings from Houston, Texas. Mike coming at you from AT Astro, Area of Truth, Aspect, and Predictive or Relationship Astrology, whatever you want to call it. And I'm doing the next segment on my moon sign series, and I got asked a couple times to do Cancer Moon, which I was going to do anyway, but I had been thinking about it quite a lot. And Cancer Moon, I mean, it's the home sign of the moon. It's where the moon feels most comfortable in. And after really thinking about it for a little while, and going over the people I've known in my life that have been Cancer Moons and what I've observed from them, I kind of felt bad because I have a habit of talking shit about Cancer Moon a lot. Because there are things about Cancer Moon we know. They're crybabies sometimes. They can be moody. They can be really sensitive. But then when I've really started to look at it objectively, and really start to kind of play through the list of people in my life who have had Cancer Moons, and I'm blessed enough to be a really social creature and very observant. So generally I know quite a few people that have every moon sign, probably the exception Capricorn Moon. I don't know very many Capricorn Moons. But Cancer Moon, it's actually a really powerful placement. It doesn't get the respect it deserves. Cancer placements in general don't get the respect they deserve. There's usually a decent amount of attachment to the mother. That's always going to pretty much be there. Cancer moons are moody because of the nature of the moon. It, waxes, it wanes, it ebbs and flows, and it's just constantly changing. The emotions are always fluctuating. But the thing about Cancer Moon, though, is, one, it's a cardinal energy. So there's definitely a lot of bravery in terms of how they handle their emotions. And there's just a sweet nature to it, a very sensitive, caring, compassionate nature to it. Not compassionate in the terms of like Pisces moons, where it's like compassionate for humanity in general. It's more of like compassionate towards, the situation right in front of you. There's a high degree of emotional intelligence, a very high degree of emotional intelligence. And there's a lot of emotional strength as well. They can read emotions. They understand how the emotions work. They understand. It can make them sort of bleeding hearts for certain people. The downtrodden. They tend to, they tend to love people that aren't doing so well or are getting picked on because they can, sort of take that motherly role. They love to nurture. The men operate a little bit differently than the women, I've noticed. The women are just, they're usually just born mothers, unless there's other aspects in the chart that, are preventing it or sort of downplaying it. But the women are born nurturers. They're also kind of worriers. They definitely, they like to fret over, because it's like a crab. The crab, it reaches out, and then anything that scares it, it just goes back into its shell, and it wants to protect and keep safe and hold on to my baby. There's predators kind of energy mentality. So they tend to worry a lot, especially the women. What you wouldn't expect out of Cancer Moons, though, is they actually make phenomenal leaders. And I've seen it, especially among the men. Okay, so I have a pretty checkered past, and I've been incarcerated before. I'm not talking about jail either. Like, I've been in there. And, I've done people's charts while I was locked up. I used to use an ephemeris. I paid attention. And even on the outside, I've seen it too. The men, actually, they tend to have a very, they tend to be very good at leading groups because that emotional intelligence, they can, like, for instance, there was this man that was basically like the king head honcho of the Hispanic, the Tongo Blasts, where I was at, my unit. And he was the undisputed leader of the group, and it wasn't because he was the biggest or the baddest or the toughest, because he was kind of tough, but it was actually more of he was good at creating this family environment that would bring in all the other people from his race, and create this environment with them where they felt like they were family, where they were brothers. They would all eat together. They would all protect each other. And he fostered very carefully this nurturing environment that the other members of his group learned to rely on. And they tend to do that. They make great organizers because they can deal really well with interpersonal relationships, one-to-one relationships, because they can emotionally empathize with somebody, and they can make you feel like you're heard and you're understood. It's actually really powerful. Now, they have to learn to not be so freaking sensitive. I mean, but they can take a lot of things more personally than they need to. They can react more on emotions than they need to, but recognition helps a lot with those particular placements. A lot of them have had to deal with really hard things in their life that teach them to control their emotions a little bit better. But even when they learn to control their emotions, they still understand the nature and the necessity to be emotional, to understand that other people have emotions, and to really sort of put yourself in their place. It's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to have. I'm not so good at that because, I'm Mr. Leo Moon, so my emotions matter more than everybody else's, which I try to work on, but sometimes I'm not so good at that. But like, I look back at the people that have helped me in the past, like my grandmother. She's a Cancer moon. She never turned her back on me one bit, even when I was going through, some of the worst parts of my younger days when I was mired in addiction and criminal behavior. She never gave up on me, ever. One of my friends growing up, one of my oldest friends, I remember him sitting up with me late at night when my parents were going through their divorce, just making sure that I was always cool, bringing weed over to the house or whatever, getting me stoned in the middle of the night because he knew that I was all fucked up over my family falling apart. Or one of my other buddies that, he saw that I was struggling, homeless, trying to, figure out a way to make myself, I was far away from home, and he just happened to have met me, and he saw everything that I was going through, and he went out of his way to kind of help put the tools in my hand that I needed to get myself out of the situation I was in, and I ended up doing it, and he actually was a lot to blame. He was a Cancer moon. They can be really good people. The only thing I see happening sometimes is when they get fucked over emotionally, they have to be really careful to not get bitter and to not get fearful of everything. You can't always be afraid that people are going to hurt you, and that's a big lesson for Cancer moons. Now, even though like Cancer is at its home, or the moon is at home in Cancer, that doesn't mean that it's perfect there. I mean, every single position, whether it's an exaltation, fall, detriment, whatever, there's still a positive and a negative, and they tend to be. It's a cardinal energy, so they tend to act on their emotions, but they also tend to very quickly react on their emotions as well, and they will hold on to past pains and past hurts for a long time, and you have to learn not to become jaded by past pain. They're so worried about being hurt many times that they will do a lot of things to prevent themselves from going outside of their comfort zone that's conducive to growth because they're afraid of getting hurt again. You can't live your life like that, unfortunately. So, like my grandma, I love my grandma to death, and she's old now, so it doesn't matter. But I mean, she sits and watches the news all day and hears all this horrible thing on the news, and it terrifies the shit out of her. So I'm constantly hearing about, like, what are you doing? Where are you at? Da, 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 da. I just heard on the news this happened, that happened. It's going to happen to you too, and I don't want to lose you. And I'm going to be fine, Grandma. Sorry, I don't mean to vent about my grandma, but it's just, you can't. There's just, like I said, there's that tendency to be mired in fear and to be mired in bitterness if you've been hurt and betrayed. And if you learn to overcome that and understand that people, are inevitably going to hurt you even if they don't mean to, then it's easier to get over. But either way, I love Cancer moons. I love all moon signs except for one particular moon sign, which I'm going to do a video about soon. But and just doing this video helped me out a lot because I didn't realize the effect that people with that placement have had in my life, and it's actually quite a big effect. So thank you to all your Cancer moons, you Cancer moons out there, for being there for me when I needed it most. So peace. Till next time. Oh yeah, by the way, subscribe to my channel, AT Astro. Also, we've got my podcast. Me and Brittany Robinson have Outrage Astrology. We just released a new segment. It will be available on Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, and Google Play Music. So, until next time, guys. Thank you.